are you?
Well, good morning. Good morning to you, Booter.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Thank you, sir. We're back. We're back for our third episode here.
It's exciting. Week three,
It,
3 weeks in a row of seeing each other's faces.
dude, I think that's like one of my favorite parts right there is just the fact
Yeah,
that we get to chat with each other every week right now.
for sure, man. It's a great little way to catch up about uh each other and then like stuff we're passionate about too. So it's exciting.
Totally, man. And we're 5 days away from like practice.
I know, man. It's like waking up this morning and seeing like drivers tweeting photos or Instagramming like it's race week. I'm like, man, this is crazy. It's just like uh we talked about it on like before in the first episode, like the off season for Formula One is so short that there's not much time where you're not really thinking about it. There's like maybe a month or two where you don't really see too much, but then it's like as
Yeah.
soon as it's back on, it's just like it's nonstop.
And it's pretty much just Christmas time, which is fine not to have any sports because you're kind of, you're focusing on family and
For sure.
and everything that has to do with the holidays. So
Yeah,
it's my out of all the sports seasons, it is my favorite in the terms of the timeline.
absolutely. Yeah. And it will,
And the
and
fact that it's just like it's 2020, it's 2021, it never crosses over
yeah,
years. I'm super into it.
and it's the off season almost makes it interesting. Like it adds to the sport just because it's so short and it's like it's right around Christmas time. So these teams they're spending a little bit of time with their family, but they're like during that time they're already focusing on preparing for the next season.
Totally. Yeah. They're training and exactly just getting focused.
Yeah.
And last week, Thursday, dropped F1 Drive to Survive on Netflix.
Yeah.
Which, like we said, I think we talked about it in the first episode, how that was kind of like the kickstart to our interest in Formula One like 3 years ago now.
For sure, man. And it's like Christmas time when it comes around almost because I forgot how because like when you look back at last season, you like remember kind of what happened. Ferrari struggled, Mercedes was dominant again, but you forget like about like all of the like the drama that goes on like inside the paddock and like everything else that has like these huge ramifications throughout the season that you kind of forget about. And I thought this year, Drive to Survive really like did a great job like showing what was going on.
They did, man. I was actually gonna say how I feel like the first season of Drive to Survive was really cool because it was like an intro for a lot of people into the sport. So just the way that they described how the teams work and how the team principals have an influence, and then the owners and the sponsors. And
Totally.
I feel like the picture they painted for that 2020 season was incredible. Like it was
Yeah.
really, really good. How it seemed like they were really able to like jump on with Mercedes for like a full day, like even more in depth. Like
Yeah.
each team, it seems like they just got more in depth in the last couple seasons.
Totally, man.
And on a season where, it was just like, it was all Lewis Hamilton, it was all Mercedes. This really brought to our attention and just shone some light on the fact that it was a really interesting season with, like accusations on team principals teaming up with each other
Yeah, the pink
talk about
Mercedes.
Racing Point
Yeah.
or Mercedes. Like it was really interesting.
It was super interesting. And I thought they like from a fan's perspective when the whole Racing Point fiasco was going on last year. So for those of you that are listening and might not know, Racing Point came out with their new car that looked identical to the championship winning car of Mercedes the year before. And Drive Survive did a really good job on kind of backing up Racing Point and like how they went about doing things, but also showing on like how all the other team principals were frustrated because this was a car that they've seen from another team a year ago that was extremely successful. Mm-hmm. And I think that I don't know, like what's your perspective on the whole thing after watching Drive to Survive? And like, do you think what Racing Point did was like fine, or do you like how does it sit with you?
Well, it was cool seeing the interviews with all the team principals, because you'd
Yeah,
have, Horner, and he was he would have his input, and, all of a sudden you have this midfield team who was battling to be in the midfield,
for sure.
you know, be jumping on top of that mid, like, competing and beating Renault and beating McLaren, and
Yeah,
just coming out of nowhere in that sense in just one off season, which is crazy.
it's nuts. Yeah.
Um, and then you have when they started interviewing like Toto Wolff, because it seems like the big component of that drama was around the brake ducts and how they purchased. So I guess in the rules you're allowed to you're it seems kind of like it's a bit of a gray area,
Yeah.
but they purchased technology from Mercedes and then
Mm.
they were able to develop it themselves. And that's kind of the rules. Like you're able to purchase an engine from Ferrari, but you've got to develop that engine yourself in
Yeah.
order to, to stay within the rules.
Right.
So that's where people, different team principals, the Renault and McLaren and those guys were frustrated. It looked like they just purchased that technology, implemented it into the car, and that was kind of that. Where
Right.
Racing Point was pretty adamant that they did purchase a piece of technology, but then they were able to actually develop it themselves.
Mhm.
Now that's where it gets gray, and we just don't really know.
Totally.
And the FIA did do an investigation. They did fine them. I think it was like 400,000 euros, and
Yeah.
they were deducted a certain amount of points. So
Mhm.
they were like, in that sense, it's like they were guilty,
Yeah. No, for sure.
according to the FIA.
Yeah, but then it's funny, like that comes up from the FIA, and all the team principals are still like, that wasn't good
Yes.
enough. Yeah, they were still like,
Yeah.
they thought it was a joke. And I'm like,
Yeah.
it's tough because the year I remember they're saying like the year they purchased that, it wasn't a listed part, so they could purchase it. But then the year they implemented into the car, it was a listed part. So I think that's like where the gray area was, and the FIA had to do something. But
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. So that was pretty cool. The other piece of drama, I guess, was that Ferrari car,
yeah,
and that led into the 2020 season too.
yeah,
Like it kind of predated a little bit, but
for
then
sure.
coming, or sorry, 2019, because it was the end of 2019 in like Austin, Texas,
Yeah,
I
exactly,
believe, where they were like, okay, I guess there was different like fuel injection points that weren't technically regulation,
exactly. Yeah,
across the board. So then the Ferrari had to stop doing essentially some part of the fuel injecting that they were doing,
Mhm.
which then lost them a ton of power.
Oh, massive! Like, and it was
Yeah.
like you look at the second half of that 2019 season, and like Ferrari is like they're competing with Mercedes every race, and then
Yeah.
as soon as someone catches on to those regulations, they've been slow ever since.
Which I feel for them, because as a fan, I
Yeah,
loved the battles that were happening with
totally.
Mercedes, with Ferrari, with Red Bull.
Yeah,
It felt like there were three teams that could kind of come into any race and
Mhm.
actually, win it.
For sure.
Whereas as soon as that came out with Ferrari and they weren't able to use that piece of technology, now all of a sudden they're a midfield team, which is like, what's fair is fair.
Yeah,
Totally understand that. But as a fan, I would have rather seen them been able to compete,
totally, man. Yeah,
especially when the start of the 2020 season, you have the first bit of testing going on, or practice weekend, and they're noticing that the Mercedes car, like the
I
steering
know.
wheel, is actually moving forward
Yeah,
and backwards.
totally.
And that was what was it called?
The DAS.
The DAS, the
Yeah.
DAS.
And the one thing I find really crazy about that is that it's the DAS. It was protested, and it was deemed legal for the 2021 season or 2020 season, but
Mhm.
now it's illegal, and Mercedes can't use it.
I
And
know.
it doesn't make any sense.
I know. Like you'd think that they would, if they were going to make it illegal, tell them like for that
Yeah,
2020 season that you're not, because they're literally getting more traction. more traction and speed into
For
corners
sure. Oh,
and out of
absolutely.
corners.
Yeah.
Because it would like I don't exactly know how it would work, but you'd either pull back on it or push forward, and
Yeah.
then the tires would like slant inwards and outwards
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
that you would get maximum grip and speed around these corners.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty wild. Speaking of Mercedes, what did you think of the episode covering Bottas in Drive to Survive?
I really liked it.
I really liked it too. And it's funny because in season 2, I feel like they did a similar episode about Vettel.
Mm-hmm.
Like similar, it was like him and Charles, but it made me kind of like Sebastian a little bit more, and I felt like this episode did the exact same thing for me. Like I was like, after watching it, I had like a soft spot for him. Just like I had you get like a better understanding of the position he's in. He's been Lewis's teammate for years, and he's always second. Like every once in a while he's coming first, and Lewis is, I mean, even they don't say there's a number one driver, he is like their first and will always be like their priority at that team, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you said, the way they painted, like Netflix was able to paint that picture, because we watched the season, and you know what, like last year I was kind of thinking, I was one of those guys who was more on the side of like, all right, Bottas, like you better do your thing or you better get the fuck out. You know,
I was the exact same. I was like, totally. I'm like, if he's not going to compete with Hamilton, then like someone else should be in that seat.
100%. And as the season went on, unfortunately, like I'm on episode 6 of this Drive to Survive, so I am curious to see the whole Bahrain section when George Russell actually gets into the car, and if they do interview and like grill into him, because that's one thing the F1 media is really good at, is asking those questions that we all want to hear.
Totally. Do you want me to break some bad news for you?
They don't talk about it.
They don't talk about it at all. they literally, they show like, I watched that episode last night, and they, at the very beginning, they mention there's a switch in the driver lineups, and they show that George Russell is driving for the Mercedes, and they don't, that's all they cover about it. They like show him like coming into the pits and everything like that, but that's it.
That's disappointing.
It is, man.
Because that was some drama that I would have loved to see behind the scenes.
Yeah. And I wonder if it's almost like Netflix was sticking to their plan. Like maybe that week they were meant to film with Racing Point or whoever, you know what I mean? Like they didn't have like the resources to be covering everything that was going on. I don't know.
100%.
Or they just, or I feel like Mercedes is pretty tight about the amount they let Netflix in. So I feel like Netflix was probably only really allowed in for those few episodes.
Totally. And they got a couple of good ones, because Bottas, he was actually able to go on and get a win, which was a nice story piece there.
Absolutely.
I mean, I feel for like, I feel like this is it's his last chance
for sure,
in my opinion, and we'll see what happens with his contract and everything. But to me, it's like, okay, either you go for it this year, or Lewis is gonna, kind of walk over you again, and you are, that's that second driver, that wingman. And it's crazy seeing those clips of like Toto calling him a wingman. And then when he does interview, when Toto's getting interviewed, and he says like, oh, like, your second driver, Bottas, and he goes, fuck you. He's not our second driver. It's like, okay, we all know who he is. And now they have they want Lewis to, because what did Lewis tie the most championships, or did he pass it this year? I can't remember.
He's tied it with 7. So him and Schumacher have 7.
Exactly. So that Mercedes' goal here is for Hamilton to get that 8th world title underneath a Mercedes car. That's fully their goal going into the year.
Absolutely. And I think you saw it a few times last season for Bottas, and they do a good job highlighting in that episode, like his, he wants to win a world title as well. And
he does.
And like, there's no doubt that he's capable. He's in the fastest car. He's a talented driver. he just needs to be more consistent. And I think like he needs to kind of start putting himself first and not really like not making the team and Lewis's success like his priority. Like that's kind of just how it has to be, I think. If he wants to do
Absolutely.
that.
I love the one piece that I love from Bottas in that was when he gave Verstappen that toe
Oh, it's so
in
awesome.
Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he knew that personally, P3 in that scenario, in that track, since it was like, almost like a 2 mile or 1 or 2 kilometer
Yeah.
straightaway, that you're better off being in third place than you are being in second place.
For sure.
And I was confused why they were so pissed off about that.
Well, I think that just shows you where their priorities lie, because
Mhm.
they knew him doing that. It's better for him. It's not better for Lewis. It immediately puts Lewis at a
Under pressure.
disadvantage, under
Yeah.
pressure, because he's got a Red Bull starting right beside him, and he'll be under pressure from Bottas. But I think it just shows you that like Mercedes is Team Lewis
Absolutely.
is really what it is. And even like when he wins the Russian race and he comes into his office, all the engineers are gone, like everyone's
Mhm.
gone, and he's like coming in to celebrate, and it's just like him and his like manager, and that's it.
Wild,
You
hey?
know, he's like, oh look, like the engineers already got out of here, and like the offices are empty, and
Yeah.
it's kind of, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah. So we'll see, man. I hope, because that would make this year pretty interesting if Bottas can really bring the fight to Lewis. I would
Totally,
love
man.
to see it.
Yeah, I would
Mhm.
love to as well. How good was episode 6?
Crazy, man. It almost made me cry.
Dude, it was like it was unbelievable. It was so good.
Yeah, yeah. The
Definitely.
story, everything that lined up there, like, so just to recap, episode 6 was following. So was episode 5 following Red Bull, or was that episode 6? I can't remember if they intertwined or not, because it was like all about Albon for one, and then it switched over to Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit intertwined.
Yeah.
So episode 6 was definitely more focused just on Pierre.
Right.
And it goes back to a little bit of Albon as well, but it goes back to 2019 when he's dropped from Red Bull, and replaced by Alex Albon. And like the same weekend, his best friend passes away. What was that circuit? Sorry.
Oh, that was Spa in
Spa.
Belgium.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So same weekend that happens, and
Eau Rouge, man. That's a
yeah,
crazy. That corner is just, or that it's just nuts. Eau
yeah,
Rouge is
it's
crazy.
wild. It's crazy. So just him talking about that, and then for him to come back in 2020 in a car that's meant to be slower and is slower and performs just like unbelievably well,
Mhm.
was pretty crazy.
He had that one pass on well, let's just go back and just for a second, like thinking about, his time with Red Bull. He doesn't perform up to the standards of Red Bull, which are super high.
Yeah.
The pressure is on. It's like, the pressure is on just to be in a Red Bull car,
For sure.
because you're expected to be getting podiums.
Yeah.
And then B, you're right beside Max Verstappen, who is arguably the most confident driver on the grid.
Oh, 100%.
He knows, like Max knows he's the best, and
For
that's
sure.
the only thing that goes into his head.
Yeah.
And then you get dropped, and then in F2 in that race, that like terrible crash with Hubert, and that's, since they're both French, they grew up going through like the same sort of karting program, so they're best friends, right?
Totally.
And he was saying that Antoine texted him before that race and said, prove them. He's like, go out there and prove them why you are meant to be in a Red Bull.
For sure. And that was right after he was dropped, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And then
he's back in an AlphaTauri.
And I mean, his driving last year in the 2020 season was unbelievable. And that episode 6, like, I guess for everyone who hasn't seen it, this is a spoiler alert, but it just shows he gets a victory in the 2020 season, and it just shows like the contrast from a year ago when he's dropped and put into a lower team, and he just does so well in that team and ends up getting a Formula One victory, which is wild.
Yeah. So for a little bit of background on the dropping, it's like he gets dropped from Red Bull to, was it Toro Rosso at the time, or was it already AlphaTauri? Yeah. So he gets dropped to Toro Rosso, which is, it's essentially like their midfield feeder team. It's their junior, it's where their junior drivers, they'd start developing them from Toro Rosso, and when they start proving themselves, they will get their shot at Red Bull. And Danny Ricciardo, he came up on Toro Rosso.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Vettel came up on Toro Rosso.
I think so, yeah.
And then they all got their chances with Red Bull. Vettel went on to be a 4-time world champion. Daniel, we know what happened there.
Yeah, seven-time Formula One Grand Prix winner, no championship.
Yeah, but unfortunately did not get that world championship for a number of reasons. So that's where Pierre Gasly gets dropped from Red Bull to Toro Rosso. And then they did a rebrand going into the 2020 season as AlphaTauri, which is pretty cool. AlphaTauri is a designer. It's like a clothing designer company out of Italy that is owned by Red Bull.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite thing about these guys is like they now brand an F1 car, which is the top of motorsport. And when you see all these behind the scenes, like these guys are in like mansions constantly.
I know.
Like,
crazy.
These guys, they're like princes, these drivers.
Like, photo shoots. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
driving
wild.
Ferraris.
I know. So he gets put on this midfield team that's supposed to be battling with like, more or less like the bottom teams, and then, creeping into the midfield. And AlphaTauri did a really good job of proving themselves as a midfield team last year, which is awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
And then they go into Monza, which was just a crazy race.
Yeah. There's like
crazy race.
I guess just like there was a safety car, and then Leclerc crashes, safety car comes out, pit lanes closed, Lewis goes in, and then Pierre had just pitted before the accident, so he's on a fresh set of tires.
Exactly.
They end up red flagging it, so it's a restart, and I think he started second or third. P3, gets past Stroll, and then Lewis has to come in and serve a penalty, and then all of a sudden he's leading the race, which is just crazy. Yeah.
And then he was defending for the last like 10-15 laps. He was defending Carlos Sainz in the McLaren, and he came close to overtaking him a couple times, but the defending was amazing, and just that feeling, like it's hard to describe, because those guys at AlphaTauri, like they know, like they're striving for wins, like they want podiums and they want wins, but it just doesn't happen. No. It's like,
and it's not really like, it's not like a super attainable thing unless there's like stuff that happens like that, like a safety car or a restart. Like it's just they're not in the position to be competing at the top of the grid at all.
Exactly. So when it happened, it's a matter of luck, and it's a matter of really good driving and the car performing really well.
Sure.
And it just the stars aligned, for him that day. And he goes on to get his first Formula One victory with AlphaTauri being dropped by Red Bull. So that just makes it even more exciting.
Totally, man. It was,
it was like those pit crew guys. It's like they won the World Cup, it's like they were going crazy. It's like, and you got to love it. That passion is what makes the sport so much fun to watch, and so much fun to be a part of.
Totally, man. I couldn't agree more. I thought episode 6 was just awesome, and it was like emotional. I got goosebumps watching it, just because from just like in a span of a year, like what has happened. He was like at his lowest, and now he's like he believes he deserves that Red Bull seat. And I honestly think if he doesn't get promoted to it next year, which I don't know how long Checo's contract is with Red Bull.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I only imagine like 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, me too. But I imagine if he doesn't get that Red Bull seat and is driving consistently well through the next few seasons, he's going to end up somewhere on a different team for sure.
Yeah, he'll get a shot somewhere. He just needs to
Absolutely.
he's so young. He needs to keep his head down. He
Mm-hmm.
needs to just keep performing well in that AlphaTauri and surprise people, and yeah, like you said, be consistent and he will get a shot,
For sure.
He's a good driver and he's fun to watch. That
Yeah,
pass, man, on Perez on Eau Rouge was insane.
it's
I'll
crazy.
clip it.
Yeah.
I'll clip it here. So if you're watching, you can see it. But like the speed of that, like up the hill, like they're going close to 300 and like 320 kilometers an hour there,
Mm-hmm.
like
And
it's just
they're
it's nuts.
centimeters away from each other.
Literally, like they were so close to each other
Yeah.
at that one point. He was getting pushed into the wall, and then the tires came so close. Like
Oh yeah.
that I feel like that specific straight and corner Eau Rouge has like one of the most deaths in Formula One have happened right there.
No, I
Just
believe
because
it.
just because of the speed and the dynamic of like that little mini chicane, like
For sure.
at full throttle. It's
Yeah.
just it's crazy. And that's one thing that, we take for granted as fans. And
Mm-hmm.
these guys are going out there and they really are risking their lives every time they hop in that car.
Absolutely.
Like just that is insane to me. Like you don't think most athletes are not expecting to like, oh, I could die out here.
For
like,
sure.
What athlete is going out thinking that they're going to die?
Yeah. Well, that's
These guys, it could happen.
And it was it was reminded again last season with Roman Grosjean's crash, and like as safe as Formula One has become as like a sport, like it's probably safer than it ever has been.
For sure.
You have a crash like that where he hits the wall and the car literally splits in half and is immediately engulfed in flames. Luckily was able to walk away from it with minor burns on his hands and feet. But that crash happens 5 years ago and he's probably dead, which is
100%.
Which is pretty crazy to think about.
The thing with like, it's crazy because like, yes, 100% these cars are getting safer, and the safety is at like an all-time, like it's always at a crazy high.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever you're moving this quickly in a in a car, in a four-wheeled vehicle,
For sure.
like it's just that anything can happen at any time. And like even the halo, it's like since the halo has been introduced, the announcers have been like, oh my God, like that halo probably saved that driver's life. The amount of times I've even heard that in the last 3 years is crazy.
Yeah, it's wild.
So, and unfortunately it does take certain crashes and incidents for them to realize what they need to do to improve the safety.
No, absolutely.
But the cars are going faster every year.
It's crazy. Yeah, I think they're trying to stop that though.
I know.
Slow them down a little bit.
Yeah. So yeah, man, Drive to Survive. I was really impressed with the season this year. Like I wasn't actually expecting it to be as good as it was.
Me too. And I like the first episode, I thought was insightful because you kind of forget about how lax like all the COVID regulations was like or were back then. Just with like no one, you could just watching it, you just realize it like, oh, we were all there a year ago having no clue what was going to happen. And I thought they just did a good job like showcasing that and like the frustration that kind of everyone felt at that time. And then just getting in more detail throughout the episodes, I thought it was really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I agree. It was it was an exciting season of Formula One, but they definitely showcased it in a good way.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Sochi looked like a party. It looked like it was spring break down there.
Oh man, it was crazy. Yeah. First event with fans at it. And there's like 25,000 people there or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was
crazy.
One of the, I think they were focusing on Mercedes that week.
Yeah.
And one of the guys, part of the team, he was saying that he went for a bike ride, or a run, beforehand, and he got military escorted out of the wilderness because, he crossed a
military
border somewhere he wasn't supposed to. Yeah.
He was arrested.
Which is wild.
It's crazy, man. Who knows what goes on over there?
And then Friday we got practice, which I'm just like I'm so stoked about. I'm really curious to see where the teams land after that first qualifying session. And I think the first race of the year always there's a lot of improvements that happen moving
Yeah.
forward, but you do get a pretty good idea of like where teams are going to be falling throughout the season.
No, absolutely. And I think after testing and you look at how well Red Bull did and Mercedes struggling, I'm just curious to see if that's going to be the case throughout the rest of the season, or if in this time off Mercedes has fixed kind of those little issues that they've had and will come out the gates kind of swinging. So the practice periods are also shorter this year. All practice sessions are 30 minutes less. So
Oh
instead of
wow.
90 minutes each, it's just 60 minutes. So I mean, it's an hour and a half less of practice. And for the first week, I think that'll make a big difference for sure after making any changes.
Dude, absolutely. That's
Yeah.
crazy. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think the main difference is because like you have a practice session and you might not be utilizing the whole thing, like be out on the track the whole time. So I think that 60 minutes is going to become a lot, uh, it's going to be a lot more valuable than having that extra 30 minutes of buffer.
Oh, it's going to be crucial.
Yeah.
And as per the Mercedes kind of talking about how they're going to be slower,
Mm-hmm.
I would not be disappointed if they are,
I know. Yeah.
because it's going to be really all of these, now it's like what, 6 in a row for these guys,
7,
7 in a row,
isn't it? Like,
crazy, something
yeah.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think 2014 might have been the last year that
But so,
Red Bull
yeah.
won it.
Um, in the last 10 years, it's just been Mercedes and Red Bull. So
Yeah.
maybe it was 6. Yeah.
Yeah. And that comes to an end. And
Yeah,
that's what Christian Horner was talking about. He's like, yes, they're on a one hell of a run here, but
for sure.
it will come to an end.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to that transition happening. And I hope that Mercedes keeps competing. It's just nice to have teams that can compete.
Yeah, man.
And it seems like Mercedes is definitely obviously one of them.
Mm.
Red Bull, we'll see where Aston Martin kind of lands. They kind of
McLaren.
McLaren,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and now Ricardo is like, it's going to be interesting seeing him paired up with Lando and just on that team. And I hope those guys can just score some points. That's
me
going to be
too,
a
man.
really fun duo to watch.
Yeah, I agree.
So
Uh,
yeah, I mean, I feel for Leclerc and
Carlos.
Ferrari and
Yeah.
Sainz, and I hope that they can find some power. It seems like I was reading some articles and it says straight line power isn't going to be an issue
Sweet.
this season.
Well,
So fingers crossed.
yeah, man. I think we're shaping up for a pretty exciting season, one of the more exciting seasons in a couple of years for sure. I just think like that midfield pack and even the top two teams are just like now with Checo being at Red Bull and having two
Yeah.
drivers that should be able to always compete for the front of the grid. I
Yeah.
think it's just going to make it really exciting racing, whether whether it's for like first and second, third, or like fourth through 10th even. Like it's just going to be, I think it's just going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
man.
feel like
Well,
Red Bull's taken, I feel like Verstappen's going to take pole.
I hope so. Yeah. Maybe put a little sports bet on it right now.
Yeah, dude, I stay away from sports betting because I just feel like it makes it harder for me to watch.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm terrible at it.
But I'm all down for predicting,
For
or
sure.
friendly bets. I'll take friendly bets, but as soon as
Yeah.
it starts getting to be big money,
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
out.
yeah, definitely won't be big money on pole position there.
No.
Well, man, I'm excited to see what happens this weekend. It's pretty crazy. It's
Yeah,
happening already. So,
I
and
know.
talk about the race next week. So,
100%.
and do you have predictions for? So you think Verstappen's on pole?
Yeah, I would say Verstappen's on pole. I
Yeah,
would even just love to see a 1-2 Red Bull,
1-2 Red Bull would be sweet. Yeah. What do you
but it
think?
would be, no, go on.
Yeah, you keep going.
Yeah, 1-2 Red Bull. I would also like to see I would like to see Aston Martin, get up there, but just after their preseason testing, it doesn't really look like they're going to be in that top like 5 right off the hop.
Mhm.
And I'd like to see, I mean, Mercedes is probably going to be there, McLaren,
Yeah.
and yeah, those are kind of, I'm curious what Alpine is all about
Yeah. No,
as
definitely,
well.
man.
And Fernando Alonso
Yeah,
and Ocon, I feel like that'll be a cool duo, with the old world champ vet
for sure.
there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if I was putting money down, I'd be putting my money on Red Bull. They've been determined. They were the
Yeah,
only team that was competing last year with Mercedes.
for sure.
So that's who I would like to see jump back onto a world championship here.
Yeah. Well, I guess time will tell, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Exactly. Who's your world champion this year? That's a quick prediction. I'm gonna go Verstappen. I'm just gonna go for it.
You're just gonna go for Verstappen. I mean, I feel like I would say the same thing, but I feel like I have to say something else. So I'm just gonna if Mercedes bounces back, I'm just gonna go Bottas, man.
Nice.
Who knows? If a Mercedes championship happens, I would love to see him win. So I see him hopefully on the front of the grid this weekend.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify, appreciate the
we
listens.
Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys next week for a recap on the first race of the year.
Can't wait.